Welcome. We're halfway through the biggest tech conference in Europe. And what could be more important than our ability to travel and connect? We're looking at a very different landscape for mobility, but the question is, are we ready? Do share your views and insights to the hashtag Future of Mobility. I'm Russell Gundry. I'm the head of innovation strategy here at Plexal, and I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to the place that you're in. So Here East was founded in the press and the broadcast centres from the 2012 Olympics, and it was tasked with the challenge of bringing sustainable economic regeneration to the Olympic Park. Here at Plexal, we have around 130 different startups, scale-ups, and organizations that are piloting rapid innovation. And we know that creating this kind of melting pot is absolutely critical to the mixed economy of future mobility. We're delighted to be home to Bird and the first e-scooter trial in the UK. We were piloting autonomous buses here back in 2017. We're delighted to work closely with TfL, and you'll hear more about that later. We have 5 CAV, connected autonomous vehicle routes here in the Olympic Park, and there is much more to come. In addition, we see Plexal as being the place where digital and physical innovation collide. So here we see technology that's designed and delivered around the needs of real people. Not only do we have this place here, but we're also surrounded by very large residential developments, commercial area, increasingly a growing cultural quarter with some exciting new developments planned, and home to 2 universities and growing. And all of this happens in Zone 2 of a European megacity, which makes it one of one. So, delighted to welcome our co-sponsor for this event, ENGIE, our neighbours in the Olympic Park. To tell you more, here's Ben Watts, Director of Innovation Solutions. Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, Russell, and welcome everybody. It's great to see so many of you here on this slightly dreary afternoon. My objective now is not to take up too much of your time before we get into the exciting part of the event, but I do want to tell you a little bit about ENGIE because some of you may not be familiar with us. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes on ENGIE as a corporate, ENGIE as an organisation, and what drives us. I will talk a little bit about the Olympic Park because this is an important place for us, and I'll talk a little bit about what mobility means for us both now and looking forward as well. The ENGIE Group globally is a global energy and services utility focused on delivering the energy transition in these core areas of renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure, and customer solutions. We're active in many parts of the world, and we're focused on developing these new solutions that will accelerate the energy transition and a transition to zero carbon. And I think it's interesting that today the announcement from government about the commitment to zero carbon by 2050 as well. So ENGIE in the UK is a significant employer. We're a large organisation active across all parts of the energy system and the built environment, from upstream pumped storage and offshore wind, right the way through to development of sustainable homes and the management of buildings. We have a strong purpose, and I think this is something that's evolved over the last 3 or 4 years in particular. This concept that we're improving lives through better living and working environments underpins a lot of our decision-making, a lot of what we do across all of these key sectors for individuals, businesses, and for the public sector. But what do we do? So we're an energy business, we're a services business, and we're involved in regeneration as well. You can see here some of the key areas. So we have power generation assets. We have the UK's largest battery pumped storage, the first hydro asset in North Wales. We have offshore wind development. We have battery storage projects. We are a renewable developer both on buildings and offshore as well as ground-mounted projects. And we're a supplier. So we're an industrial commercial supplier of energy, and we also have a B2C business, a domestic energy business. On the services side, we have brought together our energy retail business alongside our traditional services business. So we're working on energy with services propositions, making sure that we're reducing energy consumption as much as we are supplying energy. And on the regeneration side, through some recent developments in the last couple of years, we now have capability around development, around refurbishment of buildings, particularly homes. And we're also now developing mixed-use developments. There's an example on a coal-fired, an ex-coal-fired power plant that we decommissioned a few years ago in the Midlands, called Rugeley, where we last week submitted a planning application for a mixed-use sustainable community. So it gives you an indication of some of the breadth of what we're doing in the UK. These are some of our key customer sectors. UK infrastructure, these grid-connected assets, renewable generation, grid balancing services through our storage assets. In places, it's everything from managing hospitals and schools through to district energy, such as here on the Olympic Park, which we'll come back to, but for business and for housing associations and local authorities. In business, it's everything from managing the building, the corporate estate, in all sectors, and providing these energy services. So this is more than just energy supply, it's energy management, it's energy efficiency, and all of these aspects. And then in the domestic sector as well, we've developed renewable tariffs, we're providing connected home solutions, and we're providing what we call white label services to local authorities to enable them to themselves become energy suppliers. So us working in the background, using our license and our capability to enable others to deliver for their communities. So just bringing it a bit closer to home on the Olympic Park here. So we have a number of services that we deliver on the park. They're listed here. On the left-hand side, we operate a 40-year concession. We've invested over £100 million in a district heating, cooling and electricity, a low-carbon electricity system here on the Olympic Park, which provided all of the heating and cooling for the Games in 2012 and was designed for legacy for the long term, for the 40-year duration of the concession. So we are now expanding that system. All of the new buildings which are appearing on the park, which there are many over the last few years, are all being connected to this community, this low-carbon community energy system, providing benefits for all of the people on the park. We also maintain venues and the landscaping on the park. We look after the building management side of things. We look after the orbit. We operate a catering concession at the E20 building. And we also manage a community interest company that we set up, which brings the community sector and the volunteering sector into some of the activity around what happens on the park. So it's an important place for us. Plexal is an obvious place for us to come to hold this kind of event. We've incubated a project here. We're very excited to be part of this session today. Finally then, on green mobility, and the purpose of this event is to talk about the future innovation in mobility. ENGIE has strong ambition. We've delivered quite a lot. We have a certain amount of infrastructure, a certain amount of capability, but we see this market changing very rapidly, and we see our customers with increasing challenges around, particularly around air pollution in cities. So we have over 50,000 charging stations, EV charging stations across Europe. We've made a commitment to invest 100 million euros in natural gas solutions, so compressed natural gas and LNG solutions for larger vehicles, so buses and HGVs in particular, across Europe. And more broadly, there's a huge amount happening within the group around public transport infrastructure, around intelligent transport systems, around car sharing platforms, smart parking, around the development of EV charging infrastructure with storage, and around urban planning for some of our partners. So a massively important area. It maps into all of the core activities around energy services and regeneration that we're focused on. And in a market which is increasingly merging with other areas and other markets coming together between energy and transport, we find this as a really vital area for us looking forward. And just finally, since this is an event that's been organised by our innovation team, I just wanted to reflect on what innovation means to ENGIE and how we approach this. I won't go through all this in detail, but this is really about open innovation. Today is about open innovation. It's about us reaching out to all of the expertise and the stakeholders in the room. We've got there's people here from all sorts of different parts of this market with all sorts of different expertise. Small companies, Innovate UK are here. We've got some of our customers here. The LLDC are present. So I think this is about us reaching out and saying that we don't have all the answers ourselves. We want to continue to evolve. We see this as an exciting place, and Plexal's a great place to have the conversation. So thank you. And with that, I will introduce Gigi from what 3 words? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gigi.
Thank you. Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm going to start by asking everyone who here has ever gotten lost somewhere trying to get to an address, or raise your hand if you've ever gotten lost trying to get to. Okay, pretty much everyone, right? Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Who here knows about what 3 words already? Okay, decent, awesome. Hopefully everyone will understand exactly what I'm talking about by the end of this. So the reason that we exist is because existing addresses are not appropriate for today's world. They're not good enough, simply put. London is one of the best addressed cities in the world, and things like this still happen, right? So quite confusing. Addresses in general can be very confusing. They can also be very similar, or the same address can be in the same city. You have like about 14 church roads in London, and then there's like in Mexico, there's 632 of the same name in the same city, right? So there's a lot of duplicate 3-word addresses in general. This happened to me actually not too long ago. I was going to a meeting, and excuse me for the people who speak German here, but I was going to Plinikenstrabe 30, and there's the exact same address exists in about maybe 30-minute drive away, right? So it's the exact location, the exact address, but it's not in the same location. There's 2 of them right next to each other. And if addresses are not the exact same, then there's also some addresses that are actually very similar to each other. You can make mistakes very easily. If you're saying this over the phone to someone, which is, let's go to 30 Lawn Road or Lawn Road, that can be confusing very easily. This is actually a true story. So a football club that went to Hunden instead of Hendon. And the whole match had to get rescheduled because the driver who was driving the team just put Hunden instead of Hendon, right? So things like that do happen, unfortunately. And then you will, I'm sure most of you here will recognize what I'm saying when you go to a foreign country, and if you speak the language, great. If you don't speak the language, or if you don't understand the alphabet, which obviously happens often, it's really complicated to find your way through. If you get given an address in Japanese, it happened to me a few months ago when I was in Japan. I have no idea what to do with this. I have no idea how to put it into Google Maps. And so another big problem with addresses is exactly what happened today. So you get here, you have the name of the building pretty much, but the name of the building or the address is just one address for an entire location for maybe 15 doors or so for a stadium or for a hospital. There's a lot of entrances, a lot of locations that only have one address for the entire space. And we've only been talking about places that have addresses, right? They may not be as good, but they have addresses. But there's a whole lot of places in the world that don't have addresses. How do you say this is the best fishing spot wherever you went last time on your holiday? Or how do you say, this is the Airbnb I'm staying at this weekend? Or this is the best place to get a cappuccino in X city, or so on? How do you talk about these locations? These places don't have an address. The reason this is the case is because addresses were invented 200, 300, something like 300, 400 years ago, and they were invented with the very precise idea of delivering a package or a mail to someone's house or someone's business. It wasn't invented to address the entire world. However, in today's world, we need a solution for that. So what happens is people start complaining, but they complain to companies, to Uber, to delivery companies, and so on. The problem is not with the delivery companies or the ride-hailing companies. The problem is with the addressing system that's not good enough. And then this is just a quick side note, but if you think about moving towards voice in the future of mobility, this is very important. I mean, I will try to get anyone to pronounce that word, that Welsh word over there. Unless there's a Welsh person here, I'm pretty sure no one would be able to pronounce that into a voice recognition system. Some of you may be thinking, all right, GPS coordinates are already there, and you can talk about precise location using GPS coordinates. But GPS coordinates, yes, they're very precise, but no one uses them, and there's a reason for that. They're way too complicated, and you've never been invited to a dinner at 25 degrees, 9 seconds, so on and so on, right? So this is where What 3 Words comes in. What 3 Words is the simplest way to talk about location. We're a global addressing system. What we did is we divided the world into a grid of 3 meter by 3 meter squares, about this space here. And to every 3 meter by 3 meter square, we gave a unique combination of 3 words from the dictionary. So if I say thread, strollers, bumble, that's the only location in the entire world that has that 3-word combination. And if I say passions himself, runners, that's the address of that exact house, that exact entrance door. And now we were talking about places that don't have addresses. Well, now all of a sudden, with What 3 Words, everywhere has an address. Every 3 meter square has an address. So you can say you parked your tent at Surges opposite Rounded. And a stadium, a big location like this. So you can say every entrance, you can say it has a unique 3-word address. We were saying about people making mistakes, right? So you write one thing, it's actually the other, like the football example. Well, that doesn't happen with What 3 Words, because we've developed an auto-suggest system where if you type the wrong combination, the system will correct you based on where you are, where on the location that the 3-word address is. So if you say table, chair, lamp instead of table, chair, lamps, and you're in New York, the system is going to tell you, no, you're not trying to go to Australia, you're in New York. We've developed the system also in 36 different languages, and we continue to develop more languages. So if you go to Japan, you can use What 3 Words in English, in Japanese, in Spanish, in French, and so on. And Japanese people can use it in any language, in Japanese, including in the UK as well. Exactly. So if you get a 3-word address in, I think this is Chinese, I'm pretty sure. If you get a 3-word address in Chinese, you can use that simply instead of trying to understand the Japanese characters. And because you know it's a format, word, dot, word, dot, word, you can easily use it as well. This is a selection of the companies that we work with today. So, for example, in the UK in particular, we work with emergency services. It's really exciting to be working with them. People are calling the police and saying, I don't know where I am. I've just fallen off my horse and I've broken my leg. They get sent a link. They read the 3 words to the police officer, and the police can easily find them, which is something that the police don't have a way to do at the moment. And then within mobility, more in particular, we're working with ride-hailing companies like Cabify, where you can use the app and you can type a 3-word address as your destination when you're ordering a taxi. We also work with Kakao Maps in Korea. They're the equivalent of Google Maps in Korea. You can type also a 3-word address into the app and just look at it like you would type it into Google Maps, for example. And you can also discover a 3-word address within Kakao Maps. Safe in the City is an app that helps people sort of generate when there's a sexual harassment or any sort of difficult situations. They can say, hey, this happened here, and you can also navigate using free or safe routes with Safe in the City, and you can also type a 3-word address into Safe in the City. We work with Mercedes, so if you happen to own a Mercedes, you can sit in your Mercedes in the latest models, and you can sit in your Mercedes and say, hey, Mercedes, navigate to What 3 Words, apple, banana, spoon, and you can easily get to that 3 meter by 3 meter square. The car recognizes what those 3 words are, and they know where the 3 meter square is. The same happens with Ford. You can also say the 3 words in your Ford, which is also very exciting. So try it if you have one. I'll show you quickly a quick video of how we're working with voice, which we consider to be the future of mobility, and What 3 Words has been designed as the unique addressing system that's been designed for voice. So it's very important.
Blur pound steps.
Alexa, ask What 3 Words to order me an Uber to Filled Count Soap.
Go to location public warns artist.
Take me to What 3 Words, lanes, larger, daring.
So that just illustrates a little more like some of the examples that I was giving you. So you're probably wondering, how do I get a 3-word address now? It's very simple. I'd recommend you just go ahead now, download the What 3 Words app. It's free for consumers, and you can type your traditional address and then refine and find the square in front of your front door. So that's going to be it's a very simple process, and then you can start sharing 3-word addresses with your friends and navigating directly to them. And this is exactly what happens. So we have businesses who put their 3-word addresses in front of their front door. Their address, like they would share their address on their website, they also share their 3-word address because they know that that's another way that people can easily get to their restaurant, hotel, or so on. We're working with Lonely Planet. The first guide came out as the Mongolia guide with What 3 Words in every single location as well, so you can use it there. Eat Out has listed all their 500 hotels restaurants, best restaurants in South Africa with 3-word addresses. And then you have several different, several different hotels putting their 3-word addresses on their websites. So yeah, go ahead, find a 3-word address, share it with your friends, and yeah, looking forward to discussing the rest now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gigi. Thank you. And we're not letting you go, so please do join us. So we're tantalizingly close to a future that's autonomous, connected, electrified, shared. We've seen something which is super cool. The question is, what's standing in our way? How can we enable the future? How do we make it balance the needs of people in a way that's sustainable, in a way which creates economic growth for the UK and beyond? So to debate those questions with me, we've got Gigi here. We'll also be joined by Paul Roberts, who's MD of Home Energy and EV for ENGIE. Paul, please join us. Rikesh Shah, who's Head of Commercial Innovation for Transport for London. And Jof Ruxton, who is Head of Infrastructure Solutions for Immense. Hello, folks. Okay, so Gigi, I'm going to start with you because we haven't asked you any questions yet.
Go ahead.
So you described an exciting future. What do you see as being necessary to support that future? What do we need?
Yeah, so I think that ties in with my earlier comment, but I'll love to elaborate on that. So I think, you know, the way that addresses were invented 300, 400 years ago. I sort of showed in the examples here the way that they are just not sufficient for a future of mobility. So there's a couple components there, but the first one being autonomous vehicles are not going to work if we don't have a precise way of talking about where we want to go with that autonomous vehicles. Think about this scenario. You're in an autonomous vehicle, and you said, okay, I'm going to this address. You give the address. The address is not precise. For some reason, like some of the examples I showed, it doesn't work. You're not at the right location. You can't just turn to the autonomous vehicle and be like, oh, sorry, actually, no. Like, you have to drop me off there, like half, you know, wherever you see there's Starbucks over there, because that's obviously not going to work. So we're going to have to incorporate into the infrastructure of the future of mobility also a system that allows you to talk about addresses and locations in a much simpler way. So I think that has to be a part of the component of the infrastructure of the future of mobility.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. And Paul, to answer perhaps another part of that question, from an electric point of view. So Gigi talked a bit about the data side, but in terms of electrification, same question, what do we need?
Yeah, well, we always describe that the challenge is a bit chicken and egg. What comes first? Is it the car solutions and take of electric vehicles, or is it also driven by the availability of charging infrastructure in the UK? And as Ben described earlier when he explained very briefly ENGIE, you can see we're a significant investor in green mobility solutions. And our key challenge is to ensure return on investment of rollout of public infrastructure, and that obviously depends on critical utilisation. So for me, a bit of audience participation, so bear with me for a few minutes. I'd just like to ask, if you're brave enough to put your hand up, if you have an electric vehicle. So there you go, straight away. That shows our main challenge as an investor in public infrastructure. We've got a very, very few number of people in the room who today have an electric vehicle. But just my quick follow-on question. Let's say in 5 years' time, how many of in the audience actually would expect to own an electric vehicle? So that's much more encouraging, you see. So from an investment perspective, that's the type of critical information we need. And obviously there's a whole amount of detail under there, which is, where you'd like to charge, how long, what's your general facilities. And this is why I often describe it as, this conundrum of chicken and egg from an investor perspective.
And what do you see ENGIE's role as stimulating that as being?
That's a nice question, thank you. So that's exactly what we're focused on at the moment in terms of how we can facilitate the market. And we were successful at one of these landmark projects in the UK. It was a project tendered by West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which obviously encapsulates the Leeds Clean Air Zone. So one of the first cities to go live in January with a new clean air zone beyond, obviously, the London region. And the challenge there is particularly with taxi drivers and encouraging taxi electrification combined with the need of the Leeds City Council to drive air quality improvements in their city. And we're currently actually under consultation with all the sort of main taxi companies who utilise the sort of London access. And we're working with them in terms of a package of solutions which ENGIE can bring to them to help encourage move to electric vehicles, and also the other side, which is where they're able to charge so they can actually continue with their normal routes, ensure their continued revenue in their business model. And it's not easy. There's a lot of work to do there, and a lot of encouragement and certainty which segments like the taxi drivers will need to make this happen in the UK.
Thank you. Rikesh, can I come to you? From a city perspective, how would you respond? How does a city enable new mobility?
Yeah, I mean, in the broader sense, we have a document called the Mayor's Transport Strategy, and that's what TfL is accountable for delivering. Every mayor is responsible for setting out a Mayor's Transport Strategy. So in London, we have a target of 80% of trips will either be made by walking, cycling, or public transit by 2041. Currently, it sits at around 64%. So it's a shift of millions of trips every day over the next 20-odd years. We've also set out some clear KPIs, long-term KPIs, which is we want zero carbon in London. The Mayor's been very bold about introducing things such as the ultra-low emission zone, his view on energy and sustainable forms of transport. And we're also looking at other areas such as Vision Zero, zero deaths on London's roads. So as a result, we've got some long-term targets. And as London's population grows, the challenges become even tougher and harder. So what we're looking at when new mobility comes into London, we've got our strategy focused on three main things. First, it's about engaging early with the innovator, whether that's a corporate or a startup. Then it's about making an assessment of what impact could this product have on London, looking at it through the lens of the Mayor's Transport Strategy, which is it going to affect the clean air agenda? Is it accessible for all? Is it equitable, etc.? Is it safe? And then we start making a decision after a series of trials, potentially, on influencing policy and regulation. And some of the regulation TfL might be responsible for. In other cases, it's a central government debate. So what we don't want to do is try and influence central government too early, because it takes a long time to change regulation. So as a result, if we've got evidence backing us, then it's easier to influence.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and then from the innovator's point of view then, Jof, firstly, you've not really had the chance to describe what Immense do, so I think I struggle to imagine that people in the audience don't already know, given how much you're working on. But tell us a bit about it, and also, can you talk to us about some of the sort of controversial questions around mobility as a service is promised to be this amazing panacea, but we're not really seeing it happen as quickly as some might like. Why is that?
Great. So Immense is a UK-based software company. So we're about 25 people. As we've sort of discussed on the panel and previously, there are a lot of challenges, particularly in urban areas, congestion, air quality, and new mobility, so connected, autonomous and shared vehicles. So what we do is we perform simulations for cities, so digital twins, as it were, to be able to answer a lot of these questions and take better strategic and operational decisions. So it could be working with Highways England, looking at control room applications for traffic, We're part of autonomous vehicle trials starting in London next year. That's Endeavour and led by Addison Lee. And indeed looking more strategically at how local authorities such as Oxfordshire or England's Economic Heartland sort of adapt to some of these questions of new mobility. On the sort of mass ACEs piece, so we've done a number of projects in this area, largely fueled by Innovate UK and Zenzig, which was previous Meridian funding from these organisations. We did a trial actually quite close to here in Greenwich, a project called Merge. So this was with Addison Lee and Ford, looking at trialling electric and autonomous vehicles, and particularly looking at sharing those facilities. And actually, a lot of the challenges might not be the technical solutions, but how many people want to share these vehicles, the business models, and whether you can make them work in terms of their scale, etc. So these are a lot of the questions that we help to answer and address a lot of the changes that are happening in London and from DFT regulation.
Mm-hmm. And how do you rate London as a city to work in?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the projects that have helped set up the organisation wouldn't be possible without a lot of the ecosystem in London and the UK, particularly the kind of open data arrangement in London. We've just finished a road lab programme with TfL and Plexal, looking at the impact of roadworks on congestion and air quality in London. And without the immediate access to a lot of those data sources, we wouldn't be able to run our business and help the people in the way that we do.
Rikesh, I think it's well set up for you, really, isn't it, at that point? So from your perspective, from a TfL point of view, what is London doing to create this open blueprint for innovation? So through open data, through projects like Road Lab, what are you doing, and what have you learned from this process?
Yeah, I think this isn't just a public sector or a TfL challenge. I think it's a challenge in the corporate world, which is how do you start bringing innovators into your supply chain or help answer some of the problem statements that you have? Because sometimes the immediate response is let's throw more resource at it internally, or let's talk to a tier one supplier who do a brilliant job, by the way, our tier one suppliers, but sometimes we use them as an avenue to innovate. And I think for me, what I've learned with London Road Lab was there are some brilliant ideas that can be developed really quickly in an agile way that can add value to us, and that could be around what could we potentially procure in the future or what could we procure now. And the way London Road Lab worked was we set out an outcome-based challenge. And again, in a corporate environment, sometimes we're really prescriptive about what we want. So having an outcome-based challenge, and in this case it was help us reduce the adverse impact of roadworks. Then what we did is we made it really easy for, well, hopefully you can tell me if it was easy, but we tried to make it easy for a startup to enter the process. So you didn't need to fill out a 40-page document with lots of essays, where a tier one supplier is probably more accustomed to doing from a business development or a bidding point of view. The other thing we did was, sometimes we ask questions around what's your insurance cover, what's your revenue turnover. We actually said if your runway, if you are surviving in 6 months' time, you're through in terms of the first stage. So we tried to make that simple. And then we wanted to develop a sort of a pilot stage, a pivot stage, which is you've got a product. How do you pivot it in the context of transport? So we provided a funding of £20,000 each to the 9 companies that got through. And we wanted to pay them for the pilot, because why should we just do an MVP for free was my thinking. And then at the end of that, we're at the stage now where we've down selected to a few more companies. And at the end of it, we're looking to procure up to £2 million worth of contracts. So it demonstrates that it can be done, and the secret ingredients are, and they're quite straightforward. One is the right culture in an organization, a clearly defined problem statement, and also the right procurement routes. So you've got to work back on some of the stuff that may not be as interesting. PR is great, everyone loves great PR, but you've got to work through the legal teams and the procurement teams to make sure that the route to market is clear, because if it's not, it won't work. So we've learned a lot, and 60 people from our side were involved during the 10-week program. So we have to think about resourcing, we have to think about data, but we've learned a lot from it, and hopefully we'll do more in the future.
Thank you. Jof, I'm going to move on from this kind of just duologue between the two of you, but just briefly, what's your experience from being a participant in this innovative program with TfL?
Yeah, so I guess there are two bits. I'd echo the bit about procurement. Innovation and procurement is actually an important part about being able to do innovation in real life. The second piece, in terms of the Road Lab program, a key bit is getting access to a testbed such as London, and also being able to talk to individuals in the organisation directly, get feedback on what they're looking for, and actually shape the product or solution that you're making. Often this isn't possible unless you have those sort of direct channels of communication, and that was a key bit for us. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard from a city level then about this way to stimulate innovation. Paul, from a large energy supplier point of view, what does a company of your size and scale do to stimulate innovation through these types of mechanisms?
So, first of all, being a large energy supplier, we've got access to a diverse range of customers. And that actually gives a lot of feedback in terms of what actually customers are needing. You might be thinking, well, what's in between energy and mobility? And it's quite simple when we put this in the context of electric vehicles. The electric vehicle transition for a lot of our major customers, it recognises a fundamental shift in their energy bill. And clearly we've got a role with our expertise to do numerous different things to develop these new solutions. First of all, we can be doing consortium pilots with a whole range of our different customers. I think as an industry, we've still got a lot to learn. We've just heard from my colleagues about some innovation just in the London area. We've still got a lot to do for different parts of the market. I mentioned earlier taxis, but there are many, many other areas of the market needing new solutions. We also, as an energy supplier, have expertise on things like time of use tariffs. There's going to be a big change when those in the audience that put their hand up kindly earlier about moving to electric vehicles on your bills, and you'll start to become more conscious of the cost of travel, and that's the transition I've gone through over the last few years. If you're charging your car at home, you suddenly realise you're going to more than double your energy bill. Now, that actually increases engagement in terms of the question of how can I lower my energy cost? Now, that is a fundamental trigger for the whole industry, because we now get consumers, general customers, asking the question we all want them to ask, which is how can I use less? Obviously, that gives us the opportunity to lower our carbon emissions in the UK. And from an energy supplier perspective, we can do lots of things in terms of innovative tariffs, renewable energy supply to those customers, and at the end of the day, make sure we actually fulfill the demands of the different customer segments. I think the final point I'd like to raise is that from an energy perspective, we've mentioned several times already that we're very keen on consortiums and investment. And I'm looking at a whole variety of different organisations in the audience, and we would love to work with a whole range of you on developing different type of solutions. So my simple message is the door is open for conversations, and we would love to see how together we can bring creative solutions to different parts of the energy market.
That's an interesting point around the increased awareness, perhaps driving down usage of energy, and also people being more aware of sustainability.
Yeah, well, that's a transition I've been through myself. When my wife looked at the energy bill, she said, "Well, what's happening? Are the kids leaving the light on too much? What do we do about it?" Curiously, before, the question never came up in our household, and I'm hearing the same story for many, many customers. We never really look at how much it's costing us to put diesel, petrol into our cars. It just, when it's on the energy bill for your home or your business, it crystallises how much we spend on transport. And that triggers the conversation of what can we do to reduce it. So I think we're in a rapidly changing world where customers will seek more and more solutions. And as a wider industry, we're well placed to actually provide those solutions.
Can I ask something?
Of course you can, yeah.
That's really interesting. I didn't know. Is it cheaper still to use the normal car, or to add, I guess, the energy bill, the car charging to your energy bill? What's currently in the market?
That's a really good question. If you ignored the cost of the vehicle,
Without the cost of the vehicle.
without the
yeah.
cost of the vehicle, it's a fraction. It depends on type of car and where you live, etc. But you're looking at about 20% of the actual fuel costs. The question that the industry now has, particularly in the automotive sector, is how we bring down the cost of the vehicles for electric, and how do we increase the battery size and the range of the vehicles to get not only an economic solution, but a solution which is actually a practical one that meets the journeys that you typically need to do. Or if you need to do longer journeys, you've got the certainty of where those public infrastructure charging points are, and you've got some familiarisation about how to use that charging. It's a leap going from a combustion engine to electric vehicle, not just for personal usage, but also for business fleets.
Okay, so you're seeing some maturity needed in this question of battery versus infrastructure and where these charging stations are deployed and how that's rolled out.
Yeah, indeed. It sort of builds on the first area we described. It's not an easy puzzle to solve. Investors need some form of certainty of utilisation of any charger investment in the UK. There are wider issues that the UK has to solve, which is, are we going to come up with a common platform in terms of charge utilisation and settlement? The question of interoperability is still not a solved issue in the UK relative to progress on the continent. And when we talk to our customers, EV drivers, they have a whole range of questions about what does the future market look like, where are chargers going to be installed, how much will it cost to use those chargers for those audience members who are hoping to have an EV charger in the next 5 years or so. These are the type of questions that I'm sure will be going through your mind, and many more.
And Gigi, if we use that opportunity to then jump 10 years in advance, then, so we're starting to see predictions of people not necessarily needing to travel to offices, maybe some question marks about what offices actually look like. Do people work from their moving office? What do you see? So you've got a suspiciously simple solution that actually is applicable across the whole of the world. From your very innovative point of view, how do you see that future from the perspective of what will this new world of mobility enable from a lifestyle point of view?
Yeah, it could take a lot of different shapes, but yeah, I can't wait for the moment when I can work from my, say, car that's going to take me to work, for example. So that's one thing that hopefully we'll get to one day, is where you can use the transportation time and the transportation way that you use as an actual time to either do sports or to do work at the same time, and so on. So I think that could be like a nice sort of first step towards more of that. But like you said, like maybe transportation is not going to be seen as what we see it today, not so much of a commuting sort of day-to-day life, but more like you don't have to go to work every day and so on. So it becomes a bit more, less demanded than that. But I think what's interesting as well is just as we go into a world where mobility is a lot more shared and a lot more where there's just mobility as a service rather than just one sort of individual car per person and so on. I think that's going to be really interesting, and hopefully what 3 words can come in as a standard for everyone to talk about where they're going and precise locations. And I was going to add something earlier when I was hearing you guys talk about sort of reduction of energy and pollution and so on, where if you think about it in logistics and driving and so on, every time that a delivery truck or driver wastes, I don't know, anything from 2 minutes to 20 minutes trying to find the door where they're actually trying to deliver things, that's just added time, added cost, but also added pollution. And being able to talk about the exact location where this truck has to deliver this thing is going to save those 20 minutes of extra pollution. Also, obviously, cost and time of the driver, but the pollution side of things, which, talking about renewable energies and just energy in general, that's something that I think the one thing with what 3 words is we all know that this system will be incredibly useful if everyone uses it, right? So this is about getting everyone to use what 3 words, businesses, people, companies, everyone. And then the day that happens, then we're going to see, just people not getting lost anymore, but also just 20% reduction in 20 minutes of extra pollution, time and cost and so on. So yeah, I can't wait for that day to arrive.
And how do you tackle that integration challenge? So at one level, you've got this really, really simple idea. And at another, you've got partnerships with organizations like Mercedes-Benz, who've adopted it wholeheartedly. How do you tackle that, going from some of those partnerships to a deployment across the world with every company?
It's very challenging because there's 2 sides to that question. So there's the integration with the company, like Mercedes and Ford, like you said. That is actually the easiest bit. So getting a company, a ride-hailing company, for example, to integrate our API is extremely simple. They can do that in 2 minutes, in 2 hours of a developer's time. They just integrate our technology, and then you can type the through address into the app, right? So that's like just getting to talk to companies and telling them adopt the technology. Them believing in the vision is harder, but like that's what we're trying to do, right? And then there's the consumer side of things, which is telling people like you and I and everyone here in the audience, download the app, understand the concept, and use it, right? So and then the more we see that, the more we'll get companies to do it. But we can't get people to do it if we don't have companies also adopting it. So it's kind of like finding that middle ground and doing it at the same time.
Okay.
That's the challenge.
Well, hopefully today's another step in that direction.
Yeah.
So Rikesh, we've heard about outcomes both in terms of a sustainable future, a more enjoyable future, hopefully where we might be able to use our travel time more effectively. But conscious that the steps to getting there are equally important, what's your view on how do we balance the right mix of modalities along that path?
Yeah. I mean, just building on the previous point, I think collaboration is key here, and just going back to when I was a child, there was fundamentally probably 4 modes of transport. It was public transport, a bus or a tube, into my parents' car, or my BMX bike, or it would be ordering a minicab. But if we think about transport now, it's changing fundamentally, and that means that as a city we cannot ignore new modes of transport that are being developed. So let's give you one example. Cycling. So you may decide not to cycle at all because wherever you're going to go, you decide to stream it. It could be Netflix, or you order the food in. Or it could be you've got a Brompton bike. Or it might be you've got a docked bike, which you're using from the local city authority. Or you might use a dockless bike. Or you might use a scooter. Or it might be a Segway. Or you might be in a cycle club. So just immediately there, you've got multiple options on one mode of transport. We know exactly the same's happening in other ride-sharing products, whether it's an app-based minicab service or something else. In London, we've just trialed a couple of things. So one is a code of conduct for dockless bikes. The dockless bikes have a key role to play in London, but they've got to be administered correctly. What we can't have is a bike next to the A406, where the cars are going at 70 miles an hour and the bike's dumped. That's a bad outcome. What we can't have is a bike dumped next to a railway track. Again, that's a bad outcome. But if the bikes are applied and put in the right place, where it's safe, it's secure, it's reliable, that's a good outcome, and that complements the Mayor's transport strategy. Similarly, demand-responsive buses, some of you may have heard of them. We've just launched a trial in Sutton, whereby you've not got a fixed location and a fixed destination, a start point and an end point. It's flexible based on the demand from the local residents. So what we're looking to do now is test new things, but it's got to be done in a controlled way. If it's not done in a controlled way, before you know it, and there are other city examples where you've got scooters dumped all over the place, it's resulting in, sadly, fatalities. So you cannot just say yes to everything. On the other hand, you can't say no to everything. So you've got to get that balance right, and that's got to be done in a controlled manner.
Okay, it's all about balance. Thank you. And I am conscious that we are just about out of time, so maybe one final question to Jof. It would be remiss of us not to mention that the transport strategies have just been refreshed. We've talked about balance, we've talked about outcomes, we've talked about creating innovation. What else needs to be there from a strategic point of view from your position as an innovator in order to make this journey a success?
Yep. So firstly, the DFT document's very useful, particularly summarising where we are today and setting out some principles for the future, which we would agree mostly with. In terms of looking forward, so particularly in our domain, as new innovative ways to model cities, and in our case simulate the movement of peoples and mobility systems, there need to be new ways of regulating or assessing these models. So in the UK, there's WebTag, which is a system for assessing some of these models and being actually able to use them for economic appraisal. So a lot of these changes from previous business models to the way technology is revolutionizing that is really important. So that's one area which I'm looking forward to see develop.
Thank you. Thank you. So please join me in thanking our panel, Jof, Rikesh, Paul and Gigi. So folks, you can exit the stage, and thank you very much. These 4 people will be around for conversations, questions, discussions throughout the rest of the event, as I understand it. So thank you again. I'm now going to welcome Holly Stockbridge, who is Innovation Manager at ENGIE, to talk through and introduce the Future of Mobility pitch session. So, most exciting part of the day, really.
Thank you.
34 entries, down selected to 3.
32.
We're going to hear from.
Yeah.
Winners then get 6 months membership at Plexal.
This lovely place.
This great place. Everybody gets one month of membership at Plexal.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, we're looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you. So thank you everybody for coming along today. It's great to see so many people here at this event that we decided to put on together. You never know when people are going to turn up, so thank you. As Phil said, last month ENGIE and Plexal we decided to launch a joint call for projects. So this was all focused on the future of mobility and aligned to one of the grand challenges which we're discussing today, mobility. As Ben and Paul have both mentioned, mobility is one of the key strategies for ENGIE, and we're developing a number of solutions along these lines. So we're really keen to find different startups that can help us develop this strategy. So we launched this challenge. We never know if a company's going to enter. We managed to get entries from all across the world, which is great. And we had a few companies from the UK enter as well, which is even better because we're really about supporting UK startups, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today. The call that we launched, we were looking for 4 main areas that we wanted to have solutions from these companies. So these were solutions that involve leading edge technology or entirely new modes of transport, new business models that provide greater inclusivity and access to clean transport, solutions for last mile deliveries, including the potential for integration of passenger freight solutions, and solutions that can facilitate the more rapid development of EV infrastructure. Sorry I couldn't remember all of that off the top of my head, but quite a lot of information to remember there. So we had 32 submissions in total. We shortlisted that down to 8, and we've got the top 3 companies here today for your viewing pleasure. There are 3 very different solutions. We've got Grid Smarter Cities, Oxto, and Parking Eagle. So we've got our esteemed panel of judges, so if I can welcome them to come over and sit at the table. We've got Rikesh and Paul, who you've already met, but we've also got Neil Fulton from the Connected Places Catapult and Christian Inglis from Innovate UK joining our judging panel. So thank you. So, judges, are you set? Got your pens? Got your scoring material? Okay, so off we go. So I've set the context, you know what the competition was about. So I'm delighted to welcome up onto the stage Dom Hymans, who's the Digital and Communications Director for Grid Smarter City. So please welcome Dom to the stage.
Excuse me, excuse me raising up quickly, making the most of this lovely ramp. So as mentioned, I'm Dom Hyams, but this is also my colleague, Julian, working with me at Grid Smarter Cities. Sorry, my chair's decided to go very slowly upwards. Yeah, perfect. Lovely. Sorry for those of you who can't quite see me around there, but hello. So today we're here to introduce to you ADAPT, which is Assistance for Disabled Air Passenger Travel. And ADAPT really is, in essence, an app to connect a disabled user with an airport and navigate through the airport environment, creating a better experience for both the user and the airport themselves. The technology itself has come off the back of what previously was called the Assist Me app. And Assist Me was an app that linked a user with a service provider and allowed the user to request assistance in advance of turning up at a service provider, and then in real time turning up a little bit like a reverse engineered Uber cab, turning up at the service provider and the service provider knowing who they are, what they need, and being there to meet them in real time, removing that kind of ambiguity and frustration around travel for so many people. So the need for this technology, I'm sure, here we go. The need for this technology, I'm sure you'll all agree, has been very evident in the press recently. First of all, the big one about a year ago was Frank Gardner getting stuck on an aeroplane for a prolonged period of time. And for a lot of people traveling, airports are a minefield. The processes involved, the points of handling with service providers, you go from one point to another, and at any part of that process, the ball can be dropped, and as a user, you can be left in a very difficult, stressful situation. There are roughly 13.3 million disabled users in the UK, and I can safely say that although a lot of them travel and do go abroad, there's a significant proportion that won't even consider travelling by air because it is so stressful and has created so many difficulties. I was explaining earlier to James how I feel that most disabled travellers have kind of stories that they are so used to now recounting as like badge of honour. Oh, well, I was left for 4 hours. Well, I was left for 5 hours. And they really, they become part of, who you are. You've all experienced these kind of situations. So what we're trying to do is really start to mitigate these problems and start to provide simple solutions to creating a better experience for disabled passengers. So how does it work? Very simply, a disabled user has an app and they have a profile where they input information about who they are, the nature of the disability, any specific equipment they need. So, for example, I would write in how much my wheelchair weighs, that it's got dry cell batteries, and that it's 65 by 85 by 95. You're well drilled on what the equipment you have is. You'd also explain what assistance you need on the aircraft and whether you need assistance boarding or check-in or whatever that might be. That information, when you request assistance, then transmits over to the service providers, to the care handlers, and then at that point they know who you are, they know what you need, but then critically they also know when you're coming. They see you coming, and then when you're approaching, they get an alert to say you're very near. There's also the ability in the app to talk via two-way chat and also call for help. So obviously every disability is different and everyone's needs are different. So it also allows the opportunity for people to just say, I'm here and I want to know that someone's coming. And then, pardon, sorry? Yeah, 1 minute left. Oh, sorry. I'll just move on to Julian to carry on talking about the business case.
So in this particular case, there's a very large airport, not too far from here. In 2016, they had 1.2 million passengers who requested assistance. And those passengers weren't able to access the retail outlets, the cafes, the bars, and so on. On average, the typical passenger passing through those airports would spend close to £9. So you have 1.2 million people not spending £9. So you get close to a figure of about £10 million that is lost revenue for that airport by simply not providing an adequate service to customers. In addition to that, you get better customer service, and time is up apparently, so I'll have to finish. But thank you very much.
So we'll now move into the Q&A section. We've got 5 minutes now for our judges to ask any question that they would like to Grid Smarter Edge. Does anyone have a question?
First of all, thank you very much for an excellent presentation. My quick question was about the status of development. Is this actually live today? Is it operating an airport? Have you used it?
So that was one slide that I just skipped over. So Adapt as a solution is actually been born out of a project with Innovate UK. And the reason why we went specifically into looking at aviation is because the space, as we kind of touched on, the space of the innovation is so much more complex than just user and service provider. So this summer, in July, we've got trials with a major London airport. We can't really say much more than that at the moment, but this is providing us that MVP and that trial to actually create the business case to show underlying benefit to both user and service provider.
Thank you.
Again, thanks very much. Fantastic presentation. My question really is around the developments from the work that you've done in the rail industry. What technically did you have to do to advance the app on to deal with the aviation industry?
The back-end services are actually common. So we use this in the rail delivery sector, and Assist Me actually came out from the problem of a disabled driver trying to find an on-street disabled parking space and to be able to book that for themselves. And we used a set of we then translated that into both this and a curbside management tool for parcel delivery, believe it or not. So you have a common set of components. All we had to do really for this was develop the user interface more. So within Heathrow, you lose your GPS signal typically. So with our other applications for on-street parking and management, we use GPS. With this technology, we had to use a different set of technologies to partner with somebody else for internal mapping and navigation. And then it's just basically liaising with different users and building that separate interface.
Okay, thanks. One quick question. In terms of improvements or continuous improvement of your product and feedback from the work that you've done in the rail industry, how many users, how much increasing use of the app have you seen, and what have you done to keep on improving it?
We did a project with the rail delivery group, and that included 19 different people with different disabilities, some with more than one disability. The rail delivery group hasn't taken that up. We've proposed that they take that up. Legally, they are supposed to actually comply with the legislation. Why they're not complying is a big question.
Okay, thank you.
Hi guys, a quick one for me. So what would winning this mean to you guys, the 6 months?
In terms of where do we think we'd be in 6 months?
Yeah, well, or the support that you would get from the 6 month support by winning this, what are you looking to get out of it?
I think personally, for us, this provides an amazing opportunity to firstly showcase that this is going to work in an airline space, and provide real data that can sit behind what we're doing, and then take that to firstly other airports and that kind of thing. But then also this provides a platform for us, as Julian said, the technology that we have at Grid Smart Cities, a lot of what is in Adapt is also in so many different kind of sectors that we operate in. So this translates into transport. This translates into mobility. This translates into what we do in delivery and around how you can connect a vehicle with a service provider and actually know when they're coming and be ready and waiting for their arrival. So a lot of what we do is around helping people to get from A to B, but that also translates into freight and other things like that as well. So it's about utilising the relationships that we'd get to actually expand this technology and its use and its IP into other areas.
Yeah, thanks for that. The theme is absolutely right. So in London, 14% of Londoners say they have an accessibility need of some sort, and it prevents them from navigating on our network. I guess the question from me is, based on your previous experience, you need staff engagement into this, the operational staff. And do they have a separate app compared to the customer-facing one? I guess they do. How did you drive the engagement so there is usage? Because if people aren't using it, the staff, you lose credibility.
From the technical side, all the apps we build, we actually build the APIs first. So we've had conversations with the service providers. Okay, time's up again. I'll just finish this question. So we already had those integration type questions and answers with them. So going forward, they're going to integrate our services within their existing app. So they won't be using our app per se.
I don't think my mic, oh, it is now. Yeah. Thank you. Can we give a round of applause to our two pictures? Okay, so if we can now welcome onto the stage George Prasinos, the CEO and founder of Oxto. You've got 5 minutes, George. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is George Prasinos, and I come from Oxto. I'm the CEO of Oxto. So the grids everywhere have a problem. They have to balance second by second what's been generated and what's been consumed. Apart from that, we introduce into them renewables, which make this problem even bigger. Making this problem further and more problematic, we have electric vehicles. Now, electric vehicles create a problem for the users, and I think most of you have the issue that you don't buy electric vehicles it's because you don't have where to charge it. So to upgrade the infrastructure in order to accommodate for that is very expensive and prohibitive. Now, to illustrate this problem a bit further, here we have our lovely grid, and we want to introduce fast charging stations, or even electric vehicle stations, and this for normal cars. And we want to introduce for taxis or fleets, so the cost of investment increases. Then we want to have for bigger vehicles, like buses, for example, that they most likely demand very high levels of power. We're looking like, for example, some chargers of 300 kilowatts, which is quite a big number. And then we have even larger vehicles. And if we want to electrify the whole fleet, the cost of investment for the infrastructure is huge. Now, there are some solutions, some cost deferrals. You can use, for example, chemical batteries. So you defer the cost, and instead of having infrastructure operates, you have chemical batteries. Then, but batteries have have maintenance problems. Very high maintenance cost, and also replacement cost. And the disposal. They're not environmentally friendly, although they claim to be, they're not. And we have a lot of problems of how to do with the batteries, both on the vehicles, but let's say on the infrastructure side, what we do after with them. So Oxto has developed a Flywheel energy storage system, which is a mechanical battery. It is a much lower maintenance system. It doesn't need to be replaced. It lasts for 25, even 30 years, most installations. And because it's all metallic, it is very environmentally friendly. So let me show you how this works. So a Flywheel, essentially, it works exactly like a battery, but it's a mechanical battery. So what you have is you're spinning a mass. The faster it goes, the more energy you store. Now, we can install the systems independently, or they can be installed within containers, on forecourts, or any sites that they require them.
Yes, please, yeah.
That was my sound, but anyways. So just to give it of where the technology has started, where it's going, we have started with some smaller prototypes. 5 kilowatt systems. Then we have increased to 65 kilowatt devices, and now we're manufacturing the next generation, which is a 65 kilowatt system that's going to be deployed at the end of this year. So the market for EV charging, I'm sure most of you must be familiar, it's a quite large market. It is increasing. So the business is suggesting, look, I also suggesting to sell these units direct to the customers. I'm going to offer a power as a service, so you can potentially just list them and run them as you please. Or we can have them, if it's, for example, for events, let's say e-Formula, or you have like any events, local events that require electrification. We're the only technology that we can use energy storage assets for short-term applications. We have a great team, experience in the industry and in the sector, along with our engineering team, which is based up in Coventry, in the UK. And we have a very interesting network of partners. We are working with a couple of universities here in the UK to optimize the power electronics, software, and all the capabilities of how we integrate electric vehicles with our technology. We're working with manufacturing partners, all UK-based, in Leeds and in Newcastle. And we're also, at the moment, based at the Manufacturing Technology Center, which is helping us to demonstrate and actually create efficient manufacturing processes. So, yeah, this is from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. So, judges, does anyone want to kick us off with a question?
I'll start. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for keeping to time. Well done. So I guess my question was, on the, you mentioned the 65 kilowatt system.
Yes.
So is that something that you're doing as an R&D project? Is that with a commercial customer? So where are you at on the commercial side with that? Are you selling these things, I guess,
yes.
is what I'm asking.
We have developed the technology. Initially, it was for a satellite application. That was a very smaller unit. The company has its origins from the satellite industry. We have migrated from that and tried to demonstrate that technology works here on Earth with the 5 kilowatt systems. And now we're at the stage that the 65 kilowatts can be the commercialization system, the size that will be launched and like selling to customers. We have a couple of pilot projects here in the UK and also in Austria. So we're at the stage of analyzing development, getting the certification ready, and then starting installing the first pilot first quarter of next year.
Again, thanks very much for the presentation. My question was around, you've mentioned a few organizations, universities primarily. In terms of the energy supply industry, what relationships have you managed to build up there?
Energy supply, you mean in terms of generation companies?
Yeah, right across the energy industry, from energy generation to the distribution itself.
We have in terms of like a substantial pipeline in terms of companies that are interested in using our technology, varying from renewable operators of solar, wind, offshore wind. We have a company, one of the first pilots is going to be in Austria. It's with a utility that has hydropower plants. They want to participate in the primary response market. So they have, instead of adjusting the flow of the power plant, they're using our devices. There are a number of organizations we're also looking, and one of the University of Surrey is also involved for electrification of fleets in warehouses, so return to base scenarios. So there are a couple of businesses that
Okay, thanks. And lastly from me, in terms of timing and deployment, if you could deploy a commercial service, when would you be able to do that?
We're estimated by the end of the year we're going to have the certification ready. And everything was designed like from day one in order to be able to scale rapidly. Because the biggest problem with energy storage, as we see, is technologies, especially batteries, is how quickly you can deploy them, how quickly you make them, how quickly you could have this market penetration. So the system was designed and built in such a way that's easy to manufacture with easily available materials. It's all metallic. And we're estimating like we can have a capability of approximately 1 megawatt output for the initial stages every 3 months. And this is going to be increasing that to 1 megawatt per week at the end of 2020.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I've not seen the technology before, so fascinating. My question was about the economics of the technology, the solution, and how it compared, say, relative to a traditional battery.
In terms of CapEx, OpEx?
Well, that's payback, returns, efficiency ratings.
So efficiency ratings, okay, floor space, we take a quarter of the floor space, approximately of chemical batteries. So if you want the same power with lithium, you need way more space. We last 5 times as long as the chemical batteries on like-for-like installations and tests and like applications. We are estimating that we're going to be actually, that might be relevant, I think. There we go. So I hide in the background just in case. So flywheels in general are a bit expensive. It is one of the oldest methods of storing electricity, but no one has managed to make them affordable economically. They use nice materials, carbon fiber, magnetic bearings, all bring the cost up. Although the application and the benefits are the same, it's very expensive. And on commercial sense, it doesn't make any sense. We see batteries on complete installation is approximately at 500 pounds at the moment. Batteries will keep dropping, but the price of lithium is dropping, not so much of the battery itself or the auxiliaries, like you still need to have them. At the moment, we're at 900 pounds. This is price per, about 900,000 per megawatt, and 900 pounds per kilowatt, if you like. And we're estimated by the end, when we are up in manufacturing ready, we'll drop to 600. So, yeah.
Well, no, you've just answered it, so you've asked.
So if you were to win today, what does it mean for you, the 6 months? What will you do here?
We're at the stage of the business that we want to establish our network. Like, we have all this interest. We have, at the moment, we only have a website, and we have so much traffic coming through it. People inquiring for pilot projects, from large utilities to people who have a home. We want to create the network and establish the network here and create pilot projects in the UK, because we're getting so much international interest, and we want to focus on the UK market at the moment. We want to keep manufacturing here and also start the pilot projects here.
Great. I think we'll wrap it up there. So thanks, George.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Congratulations on a great pitch. Okay, so now it's time for our final pitch. So please welcome Talib, who's the director at Parking Eagle, to the stage. Thanks, Talib.
Good afternoon. I'm Talib Kaim. I'm the founder of Parking Eagle. Parking Eagle was originally founded to make EV travel easier. And today we have an app in the App Store and also a website. So we provide coverage for charge points in the UK. And we also show nearby points of interest. So today, what are we looking to tackle in terms of the problems? Well, there are 2 main ones. One is obviously range anxiety. That is the fear of running out of battery over the course of your journey with an electric car. But the second one is, what do you do whilst you charge? You've got 30 minutes. You're waiting at a charge point with nothing to do. So what if I told you that perhaps I could give you something to do? Or even better, that maybe that something was something you actually wanted to do, like go to the gym, shop, whatever it may be. So today our MVP has 2 components to it, or the solution we're proposing. One is to say in our app or on our website, you have a free text search box and you type in, I want to go to the gym and charge my car, and it returns the results which are most relevant. And the second element is for long distance journeys. So if you're going from London to Edinburgh, why wait at a service station which, has fast food or wherever it may be, but perhaps you might want to stop and charge at IKEA, for example. So in terms of where we add value to the ecosystem, or what are we looking to do? We're looking to obviously increase the proliferation of EVs across the ecosystem. So there are more journeys planned. And what we'd like to do is integrate with EV Box. So EV Box has over 50,000 charge points across Europe. Bring those charge points onto our platform and show live route planning across Europe. And then we'd also like to increase footfall for retailers. So one key element of this is retailers getting involved in the ecosystem, but being able to measure that return. So in the icons within the app, the retailer could put in their logo, and then when they click into the icon, they can put adverts or discounts, whatever it may be, to emphasize the service that they're offering. And then in terms of our target segment, we're looking at millennials, so 18 to 34-year-olds who are environmentally conscious, cost aware, but also interested in using car sharing services. So as one of the points that was alluded to, we need people who are traveling around and actively using EVs. And this is one point where we think we can break the market, or break into the market. So how would ENGIE monetize it? We'd like to be packaged alongside EV box charge points, enable their retail clients to advertise on the platform, and then use journey data that we pick up to actually analyze where that demand is for charge points. So finally, how do we get to a minimum viable product? So in terms of the overall cost, we think it will cost between £35,000 and £70,000 as a range. In terms of who we're partnering with, so we're working with the Hartree Centre. We'd like to work with EVBox and ENGIE, and finally IBM. And then in terms of what goes into those costs, we're looking at API costs, server costs, data costs that we bring into the actual, to do the development. So in terms of timelines, we're looking over 6 months. In the first 2 months, we look to bring in EVBox charge points and do route planning across Europe. And then we look to expand to obviously do the main algorithmic work, which encompasses natural language processing, and then improve the calculation speed and efficiency, and finally refine and develop the algorithms that we have. And then in terms of a running cost on an ongoing basis, we think it's going to be somewhere between £2,000 and £3,000 in terms of server cost and API cost and running it throughout, and also development maintenance. And how do we monetize it? So our revenue comes from affiliate costs in terms of advertising. We're looking obviously at potentially having a commission sharing arrangement with charge point instances being paid for via the app. And then also we're looking at perhaps bringing on electric vehicle car sharing companies onto the website or app to basically advertise and therefore connect up the car vehicle with the charge point, and you can plan routes through knowing the nearest vehicle and also where's optimal for you to actually drive to. So with that, questions? Just actually made time's up.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Talib. So, judges, does anyone want to kick us off?
Well, first of all, a big thanks for mentioning EVBox, which I completely forgot to mention in my Q&A session. EVBox is an NGO-owned company for EV chargers, so big thanks for that advertisement. My sort of question really starts as an observation, which is, as you'll well know, there are multiple apps, some very well-known ones which already exist. I won't advertise their names. I was just interested in almost the competition and the threat that more established apps today could get to this solution quicker than your solution could. But I must caveat that with it. I'm a believer in the solution.
Yeah, so it's a fair point because there are other apps and they've tended to focus on charge point and just the payment of charge points, and obviously we're looking to flip it and make it at the consumer point of view. But what we're also looking to do, which is different from those apps, is really connect up all the other services as well. So bring on the car sharing providers and also the parking element. So we're really focusing on the navigation perspective. So what those other apps have not done so far is really delved into actual tech. So one, I won't name them, has decided that if you're going from London to Edinburgh, they're just going to show you every charge point on the route. And there's 200 of them. So that's great, but it's not really that useful for the user. So, I mean, look, that's our distinguishing fact. That's probably how we distinguish ourselves. Can others come in if they have more money? Potentially. That's always at risk.
Yeah, thanks very much. First question I have, hopefully is a quick one, and apologies if I missed it, multitasking, reading and writing. Team size, and who would be writing the algorithms that you talk about?
So in terms of the team size today, it's myself in the UK, and we have a team globally, so it's about 5 of us in total. In terms of writing the algorithm, we're working with the Hartree Centre because some of this goes beyond what we do. So we have a guy with a PhD in queuing theory, sort of helping us do most of the algorithmic work, but we need to go now with work with the Hartree Centre to go above what we have.
Okay, great, thanks. You had IBM up there as a potential partner. What does that mean? Have you started conversations? Have you got anything with them?
So with IBM, it just happens that a lot of their hardware that the Hartree Centre use are with IBM, and they're supportive of machine learning and AI startups. So we've had initial conversations where they would be potentially supportive of what we're doing.
Okay, and the last point I was going to make was that charging times are, of course, reducing rapidly to the point that, I think the vehicle manufacturers would like to get to the point where it's not much different to refueling a car as we do today. What impact does that have on your business?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because you've got charging times, you've got charging speeds and battery capacity. So all of those sort of things go together. But then what comes into that is cost. So with battery capacity, it's the higher capacity you have, the more cost you take on to get on the range. With the charging speeds as well, it's where do you actually have get the electricity sufficiently powerful enough to put that electric charge point in. And then there's just an efficiency in terms of, maybe it's more efficient for a retailer to have a 7 kilowatt charger in there because they want the customer to stay longer. So,
Thanks for the presentation. So I guess something that piqued my interest was when you mentioned about millennials, which I'm not one of. And then you mentioned about journeys.
I'm just about.
You mentioned you were very specific about the problem and a journey from London to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what have you done on the sort of the research side to get to that sort of evidence base of what you see the problem as being? I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
To be honest, our customer is actually broader than that. It's kind of everyone. And where we came to is the problem which mobility has is establishing a user base and a scalable user base. And what we looked at is, well, how do you credibly get to getting individuals or getting people to start using your product? And what we realized with especially is that you need cars. There aren't enough vehicles, So by working with the car sharing providers, and a lot of their customers are millennials, that's where we landed in terms of that segment.
Yeah, and just building on that, how have you done any market testing at the moment with end users?
With end users, it's been positive. I mean, we're still small. So most of what we've done is fairly anecdotal. So we're hoping to scale up a little bit more and then do something a bit more robust.
Okay. And just one other question, if I can very quickly. It's people like local agencies, so boroughs, etc. They're currently converting parking spaces into charge points spaces. And there is a challenge around utilization and not losing revenue. Have you engaged with any local authorities?
Not yet. We've mainly spoken to retailers so far.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So after quite a lot of deliberation, what I heard from the judges was could have picked any one of the three. All very strong. They did have to pick one. Of course, all three do get a month's membership. The winner's going to get 6 months membership, and of course, we're going to give them some additional prizes as well. Ben.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you again to the three pitchers. I think it was particularly difficult, certainly from my perspective, because of the range of the different solutions. So three totally different sectors, three totally different approaches to mobility. But we do have a winner, and I'm delighted to announce that is Parking Eagle. So well done, Parking Eagle, if you'd like to come up and collect your award. So these are, there you go, there's an award. And there's a bottle of bubbly there, and of course the more substantial and important prize of the 6 months here at Plexal.
Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thanks very much.
Picture? Sorry? The clicker? No, it's not there. It's on the seat.
Folks, while we prepare for a photo, I will tell you, again, so tours, they're happening. There's a man called Kieran. He's on the corner over there, ready to take you for a tour. Secondly, networking. That will also happen. That's now. Please do talk to the great companies, have a conversation with the people who are on a fantastic panel, and have great conversations between yourselves. So, thank you again.